AM Jaishankar and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio are likely to meet on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit. So that is a very major development that we are getting from Malaysia, where External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio are likely to meet on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit. And Siddhant continues to be with us. Siddhant, how do you see this meeting?
Well, definitely. In fact, this would be the second time when both leaders will be meeting. EMS Jaishankar was in last week of June. He was in DC. In fact, he held talks with the foreign ministers of the Quad countries. And in fact, he also held bilateral talks with Secretary Rubio. So this would be for the second time when both foreign ministers will meet. There have been high-level engagements between the two countries, Harsh, despite the rough patch. 2+2 official level dialogue. Sergio Gore was in India. In fact, he called on Prime Minister Modi, and he held talks with EM S. Jaishankar. Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agarwal was in the United States last week. So these high-level engagements perhaps show the desire of both the countries to reset ties. And in fact, both leaders, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, have remained in touch in last 1 month. There have been 3 telephonic conversations between the two leaders. In fact, President Trump was the first world leader to extend birthday wishes to Prime Minister Modi. Then both leaders exchanged Diwali greetings. And in fact, both sides are hopeful and very optimistic as far as trade talks are concerned. So definitely it's going to be a very, very important meeting between EMS Jaishankar and Secretary Rubio. In fact, there is also, we also have a statement, Harsh, coming from Secretary Rubio ahead of this meeting, where Secretary Rubio says, and I quote him, that I don't think anything doing with Pakistan comes at an expense of our relationship with India, unquote. So a very, very important statement, perhaps Secretary Rubio, clarifying United States' position when it comes to deepening ties with Pakistan, that deepening ties, deepening strategic cooperation with Pakistan has nothing to do with India and is not at an expense of United States' relationship with India. So definitely, United States Secretary Rubio is trying to create a conducive atmosphere ahead of his meeting with the EMS Jaishankar.
Siddhant, can you dwell more on the fact of the Pakistan angle that you just right now mentioned? If you could tell us more about that.
Yeah, look, since the very beginning, in fact, before the Pahalgam attack and Operation Sindoor, Pakistan have been, and Asim Munir has been trying hard to come in the good books of President Trump. In fact, it all started, this relationship got started when Pakistan handed over Abbey Gate attack terrorists to the United States. And perhaps at that point in time also, Asim Munir told his US counterpart that please inform this to Secretary Rubio and President Trump. And this is the official US document from where I'm quoting this. So Asim Munir always wanted to come in the good books of President Trump. In fact, he handed over the Abbey Gate terrorists to the United States. At that time, he wanted Pentagon to inform Secretary Rubio and President Trump about his efforts to counter terrorism, etc., etc. So since the very beginning, they were trying to please the Trump administration because they were totally avoided by the Biden administration. There used to be no high-level visits between the two countries. Pakistan was out of the priority list of the Biden administration. So after Trump President Trump coming to power, so they wanted to reset ties. They wanted to expand the strategic partnership, and then Operation Sindoor happened. Very strategically, Pakistan gave full credit to the United States for the ceasefire. Right. Nominated President Trump, now offering them critical minerals deals, cryptocurrency deals, etc., etc. So when this question was asked to Secretary Rubio, he made it very clear that this is not happening at the expense of US relationship with India.
Right, Siddhant. Many thanks, Siddhant, for gathering all that.